You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look at better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the first part of What If Naruto Meets Dannyphantom. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Cray22 on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Floating up above in the sky was for all normal reasons a white-haired teenager with glowing green eyes, but that wasn't normal. The teen wasn't normal as he floated up in the air looking down at the city he had found himself in this time. They wore what appeared to be a black jumpsuit with silver boots, gloves, belt, collar, and DP symbol on his chest. On his back was a small backpack and on his belt was a small silver tube that contained an item he would protect with his dying breath. For in that tube was the infinite map, a map that could take anyone, anywhere and anywhere in the known and unknown multiverse. This white-haired teen was known as Dannyphantom, and as he floated in the sky he thought about his past. He couldn't really remember much from before the accident, and then there was the other accident that led him to where he was now. The first accident was the Fenton ghost portal to the ghost zone that ended up half killing him, making him a halfa. With his newfound powers, Danny had single-handedly fought back against the ghosts that came through to cause havoc, though this resulted in his ghost half being labeled as evil. Thinking back, he hadn't really changed into his human half since the other accident that had taken his parents away. The other accident was caused by him. His evil future self had gone back in time to make sure his own creation, but that had backfired greatly. The halfa had seen his entire family go up in smoke and flames as a boiler containing some sort of sauce exploded while they were strapped right next to it. It was after this accident and Dan's capture that Danny had been taken by in Frostbite and his people in the far frozen, where he eventually healed before deciding to take a page out of Danny's book. He knew that his clone would be fine on her own, and after some talk with Frostbite managed to set up a way for her to visit him. As such, this had led him to where he was now, floating invisible above the Hidden Leaf Village, in the Land of Fire, in another universe. Now smiling, he thought back to how he had arrived during a huge fight a few years ago where all the people in the village were fighting against a giant fox demon called the Kyubi. He tried to help and had managed to overshadow the giant fox just long enough for it to be captured. Also during that time he had found out he was stronger than it somehow, and right as it was about to be sealed away he had left and went back into the ghost zone to find Clockwork. Now here he was 11 years old, floating over the village, and with that he flew towards the forest before setting down on the ground and summoning a ring made of what appeared to be moonlight before it split. As it did, Danny felt it change him back into human for the first time in months, and could feel his power diminish, but it was still there, humming below the surface. Looking at a pool of water, he saw himself wearing a black t-shirt with silver highlights on it, black jeans, and sneakers that were both silver and black, the DP symbol on his chest still showing. His hair was black with a white streak on it, and his eyes, while one was ice blue, he had another that was ecto-green. Though he was still reminded of his ghost form, he could never change into what he looked like before. He still had a human side. Apparently his ghost side had bonded with his human half a bit due to it being so damaged, and this is what he ended up with. Time shift, backwards. Danny sat in the far frozen in his ghost form while some of the Yeti-like ghosts walked around various machines and such. On the side was Frostbite looking at a computer terminal, trying to figure out why the halfa couldn't turn human at the moment. Great One, it seems that the damage taken by your human side was too great to survive for any human. This caused the halfa to WHP his head towards the Yeti ghost, hoping that he wasn't now stuck in ghost form forever. Please don't tell me, please Frostbite, tell me I'm not. He looked at the Yeti ghost, who continued to look at the computer's screen before smiling and speaking. Fret not, Great One, it seems that you're still half alive, remarkably your ghost half is attempting to heal your human side. Though the only downside to this is that if you ever turn human again much of it will seem to look like your ghost side. Your hair will still be black though, and you will have a signal blue eye, but the rest of you will change. Danny looked at the Yeti ghost for a moment in shock before finally taking a breath in relief. He could live with this and it also allowed him a chance to have a new life. Time shift, forwards. That was one of the good things that had happened to him in the past few months as he walked through the forest towards the village while trying not to make too much noise. Being hunted by Skulker for a long time had made it near impossible for him to make that much sound when he walked or tried to relax. His mind drifted to the infinite map that had apparently changed as well as he remembered Frostbite explaining a few things to him about it. Turns out that due to him risking his life to protect the map from Vlad it had chosen him to be its new protector. Apparently Frostbite was just watching over it for the new protector to come and Danny was that protector. The map now showed whatever world he wanted and its center changed to show where he was on it. Alongside that he could use its power when it wasn't on him to travel, and only he could use it, unless he gave someone else permission. Now his mind started to drift towards Clockwork and what he had learned from the Time Ghost about this world. Time shift, backwards. Danny sat in an armchair reading a few books that Clockwork had given him to read about chakra and how to control it. There were also a few scrolls that he had studied and now he could do various techniques with his own chakra. In human form he had a lot of it, more than most people as if he was a Jinchuriki, but unlike them he had near perfect control over it all. Apparently his ghost half counted as one according to the Time Ghost side gave him much power alongside his own abilities. I see you have found out about the Jinchuriki and have figured out about the limit of your own power Daniel. Danny quickly jumped in surprise upon Clockwork coming up behind him and speaking as such scaring him. It was only after he almost blasted the Time Ghost due to reflex that the Halfa finally spoke to him. Yeah. I'm still wondering how I have so much power though, and how I can have so much control over it. According to these books and scrolls of yours the High One's chakra is the harder it is to control it, but I have near perfect control over it already. I guess I want to know how that's possible. The Halfa looked up at the Time Ghost who smiled before gesturing him to follow, and as such he did. When the two came to the central chamber of the Time Ghost's home though Danny saw himself overshadowing the cubie in one of the mirrors. Clockwork looked at it with a small chuckle before looking back at the Halfa and speaking to him. You have overshadowed one of the legendary beasts of this world you're researching, as such it has jump-started your chakra network and due to the mingling of people on your world for so long alongside that none of them have used it for a long time it has built up in all of you, making your reserves higher than anyone else. This fact combined with the fact that you accidentally turned on the portal means that your own chakra reserves have grown stronger than others Daniel. Danny looked at the Time Ghost for a moment seeing where he was going with this before finishing up for him. As such I train my powers so I have near perfect control over them and this in turns allows me to control my chakra with the same level. That and the fact that chakra and ecto-energy are closely related to each other but not exact means I'm practically stronger than anything else in that world, right? The Time Ghost nodded while Danny rubbed the back of his head in confusion due to actually figuring that out in record time before the Time Ghost spoke again. That is correct Daniel. Your ghost form will also enhance your chakra skills as well, and no you are not the strongest. You just have slightly more power than the cubie that's all, now I think it's time for an age adjustment. Danny turned around and looked at the Time Ghost for a second his face showing confusion but before he could do anything Clockwork had finished what he needed to do. Now the Halfa was 11 years old and glaring at the Time Ghost before speaking at him anger clear in his voice. What was that for? I'm almost done with PBRTY and now I have to go through it again. The Time Ghost chuckled and Danny let out a sigh knowing that he wasn't going to be turned back before a thought hit him. Say Clockwork mind telling me why I'm all of a sudden starting to figure out what people are going to say before they say it, along with how I've been able to figure out what you're going to do at times before you do it. Again Clockwork smiled and the Halfa looked at him for a moment before realizing what was going on and going wide-eyed in shock. Time shift, forwards. That was 2 weeks ago, and now Danny knew that since he spent some time at Clockwork's place he had developed a slight omniscience power. Though it wasn't as powerful as the time ghost, he could at least get some knowledge on people before they do something, along with limited sight into the future. A smile appeared on his face when the observants found out about it and had thrown a little fit, but got over it soon enough. Apparently they weren't really worried about it upon seeing Dan's thermos being in Clockwork's tower, and it wasn't long before they figured out that Danny wasn't going to let Dan happen no matter what. By now the Halfa could see the village just on the horizon and picked up his pace a little, getting more quiet as he did so. That was until he suddenly jumped into the air and managed to do a flip before standing upside down on a branch as a shuriken stuck itself in the ground where he was a few seconds ago. His mind instantly raced as he picked up the vibrations of 3 others due to his ghost half and smiling. Apparently his time in the ghost zone had given him the ability to detect energy signatures, and suppress his a bit. Even now he was suppressing his chakra enough that they could feel it, but they couldn't tell how much he really had, something he was really great for right about now. 2 more shuriken came out and Danny expertly dodged them, only having them miss him by a few centimeters, and his enhanced smell caught a small whiff of a toxin on them. Then, speaking in perfect Japanese that carried no accident, he spoke to the 3 coming after him. "If you're done trying to kill me, at least know that I'm just a traveling ninja whose home has been destroyed, and I'm the last from my clan too." His mind raced and he quickly spoke out the cover story that Clockwork had told him to say as he dodged more shuriken that was thrown at him. Sure enough, 3 people came out of the shadows around the tree canopy, each wearing a different mask and looking directly at Danny, who was still upside down on the tree branch. A dog, cat, and goat mask on each of them told the Halfa that they were ANBU agents, the best of the best when it came to killing people. For a moment they all just looked at each other, not moving an inch or backing down while waiting for the other to make a move. After a moment though, they went back into the shadows and Danny knew they wanted him to follow. It was quite easy to follow them due to the fact that he had enhanced hearing, smell, and energy sensing abilities. Soon they all arrived at the main building of the village, and the one in a dog mask gave Danny one more look before nodding, and all 3 disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Shaking his head, Danny walked into the building to talk with the Hokage, knowing that the agents have probably already alerted the place to his presence. Scene shift. The Hokage sat at his desk doing paperwork while waiting for the boy that he had been alerted about by the ANBU. Apparently they were all impressed with the boy's stealth skill due to the fact that they had been behind the boy for 30 minutes before they realized he was in front of them. This also worried them, and when one tried to incapacitate him, the boy had jumped and managed to stand on a tree, effectively dodging the attack before telling that he knew where they were. As such they brought him to the village, and at the moment were keeping an eye on the strange boy at this very moment. Sure enough, the door to his office opened and in walked a boy with a small pack on his back, and the Hokage had to blink. The boy had a streak of snow-white hair on him and 2 different colored eyes that looked around confidently but showed that he had seen and done things others haven't. The Hokage had seen some strange things before, but he had the feeling that this boy was special and like nothing had seen before, like Naruto. "I see that there has been no incidences on your trip so far, Daniel-san. I was informed by my agents about your arrival." The teen looked a bit stunned that his name had been said, but the Hokage who smiled before the teen spoke. "It was as well as one can expect, sir. I was hoping I could come and stay in your village for a bit. Though you can't trust me, I will do my best to follow your rules despite coming from another nation outside the elemental nations." The Hokage looked at the teen who spoke confidently and looked him right in the eyes, unafraid of the person who could easily arrange his death with a simple gesture. "I see, please take a seat and tell me a bit about you. The letter I received was a bit uniformity on some of the information about your homeland." The teen was quiet for a bit before looking around the room at the hidden agents and getting the message the Hokage sent them away. With that done, the teen looked at him for a moment before taking a breath to calm himself and spoke. "What I have to tell you can't go beyond the walls of this room. As you know, I come from a different nation than the elemental nations. The village I come from is on the borders of a nation called the Land of Life, and one called the Zone of Death. The Hokage nodded in understanding of why he wanted this to be kept hidden, Such nations were probably allied with each other and had peace and didn't want any of the elemental nations to invade. Unfortunately, my village was destroyed in a cataclysm and I'm one of only 3 survivors, you could say. I have a sister that is traveling and may show up randomly at times, and then there's the missing one known as Vlad Masters, aka Vlad Plasmius, who is to be killed on sight. All 3 of us aren't allied to one of the 2 nations due to our connection to both life and death. We're what's known as halfas. Though there is no one really dead in the zone of death, both sides don't really get along, but they're not going to war with each other anytime soon. The Hokage nodded again in understanding of wanting to keep this knowledge hidden. To be from 2 different nations was strong enough. Such knowledge was forbidden in both nations, and as such to just even speak of it was to be sentenced to death. I found out but was never able to tell my family about it. Us halfas are allowed to tell people, but I never did due to my parent not liking those from the zone of death. Danny went quiet thinking about what Clockwork had told him to say to the Hokage, who continued to stare at him before letting out a sigh and speaking. I can understand how you feel. We have such a rule here too, and only I along with the person it pertains to can speak of it. Any other who dares to speak of it is sentenced to death instantly. It is for the boy's own protection, but this hasn't prevented the village from finding ways around that rule. As such, he doesn't have many friends and most of the village hates him no matter how much he tries to prove them wrong. Now it was Danny's turn to sigh, for Amity was in all ghosts are evil, lumping him into that group as well. I guess I was lucky then. I found out and only my older sister and friends knew about it and they accepted me. My parents and teacher found out as well before they died, but I'm afraid of what certain parts would have done with that knowledge. Even now I know you can tell I'm suppressing my chakra at the moment so that no one knows how much I have but can still tell I have it. The Hokage nodded in agreement, glad that the boy whose family could be traced to 2 different nations had a good life before an idea entered his head. Looking at the boy in front of him who is in some sense in the same boat as Naruto, an idea came into his mind. If he played his cards right, then Naruto could have someone to talk to besides himself about the Kyuubi and another friend. Would you be interested in possibly helping an old man out with a certain problem? Danny looked up confused for a moment before getting an idea on what the old man wanted and nodding. Let me guess, this same person that you have a rule to protect him for barely has any friends, and as such you want me to help him by being a friend, correct? The Hokage nodded, his face an unreadable mask to anyone except those that knew him for the longest times. That is correct, Daniel-san. The person's name is Naruto Uzumaki and he is a Jinchuriki. I believe that you know what that is already. When the Halfa nodded and said nothing, the Hokage continued on with his train of thought. In turn for residence and protection from the council here in Konohagakure, I want you to try to befriend him. The boy is easily recognizable due to having what appears to be whiskers. I'll leave you to try to figure out what one of the 9 beasts he has sealed inside him. With that, Danny got up and quietly left the room, knowing when he was dismissed, and went to find Naruto. But before he left fully, he turned around once more and looking at the Hokage he asked one question. I take it that I'll also be bunking with him as well for a secondary condition, along with having one or more ANBU watching me for the time being. The Hokage nodded, and having the confirmation required, Danny went and turned around, leaving the room to go find his roommate. This was also the exact time that the ANBU agents re-entered the room, and one decided to appear in front of the Hokage and ask a question. Sir, do you think it was wise to let the boy go about the village and bunk with Uzumaki Naruto? The Hokage turned to look at the masked agent who was kneeling before letting a smile appear on his face and speaking. You heard what Daniel-san said, he is in a similar situation to Naruto. It is only natural that I want to send him to the boy. They both have something that separate them from the norm. Now on to more pressing matters. If you happen to come across one known as Vlad Masters, or Vlad Plasmius, know he is a kill on sight. Apparently he's considered an enemy of Daniel-san, and if you see a girl with black hair and blue eyes or white hair and green eyes, let her pass, she is his twin sister. With that, the agent nodded and went back into hiding, while the Hokage went back to the paperwork and keeping the council at bay. But instead of having one boy to look after, he has another to look after it well, one that has a similar life story to Naruto's. His mind then drifted towards the mysterious letter that had described the thing, including cover story to him along with the reason for it. Whoever this mysterious Clockwork-san was, he was certain that they had Daniel's best interests at heart by asking him to do such. He then had to stifle a chuckle upon realizing that the Halfa had not slipped up the entire time and was confident with his own ability to lie, and he had good reason, for the Hokage actually would have bought the lie if it wasn't for the letter. Scene shift. Danny walked down the street ignoring the looks that a few people gave him for his strange clothing and appearance. He could tell that at least 2 ANBU agents were following him at the moment as expected, like he really needed their protection though. In his head the Halfa went over a few medical techniques, along with some others that he had learned as well, just in case there was an emergency. Besides a few close combat techniques, he also knew long range, and a few forbidden skills that weren't forbidden where he came from. Raising his mental shields, Danny began to wonder why Clockwork had sent ahead a letter in the first place before shaking his head of the thought. It was never good to wonder why the time ghost did what he did, it would only serve to give him a headache later on. With this thought in mind, he began to wonder about the village keeping an eye out for someone with whisker marks. His mind then began to activate its limited omniscience powers, and he let the information come to him about the teen. He kept walking despite the information, and using his own energy sensing powers managed to not bump into anyone while this knowledge was put into his head. Internally he smiled upon figuring out that Naruto held the Kyuubi, and with that he knew he had to find the Jinchuriki. Some ninja passed overhead going out on a mission, and with a sigh Danny jumped into the air before heading across town by rooftop to find something to eat that wasn't ecto-energy. He also needed the exercise if he didn't want his skills to get rusty. After all, he had an appearance to keep up as a wandering ninja who lost his entire village. Soon the Halfa found a small ramen shop, and really glad that he had some Ryo from Clockwork got himself a bowl and began to eat. "1 bowl of ramen please." Another person spoke, and turning his head a fraction of an inch to look at them, Danny saw a kid with blonde hair, an orange track suit of sorts, and ironically had whisker marks on his face. In the back of the Halfa's mind he knew that Clockwork had something to do with this meeting if anything, before the woman spoke. "Ah, Naruto, nice to see you again, 1 bowl of ramen coming up." With that she went to work alongside the man, and Danny continued to eat with his chopsticks, ignoring Naruto for the time being. Though every now and again he could tell that the orange-clad person glanced at him now and then. Even the people who operated and no doubt owned the shop spared him a glance now and then. He couldn't really blame people for looking at him though. After all, how often did one see a kid with black hair, and a snow-white streak of hair going through it with 2 different colored eyes? Then as Naruto glanced at him once more, Danny decided he shouldn't take it any more and spoke. "You know it's impolite to stare at others, Naruto Uzumaki." He then heard Naruto choke up on the ramen he was eating in shock before looking at him in surprise. "What? How do you even know who I am? I never seen you before in my life." Danny said nothing as the blonde practically yelled, glad that he had enough time to prepare, but still dazed by the yell due to his enhanced hearing, before letting out a sigh and speaking. "I was told about you by the Hokage. What else? It's also kind of strong not to spot a kid with whisker marks on him." With that he finished and paid for the food he got before leaving, all the while hiding a smirk as he waited for Naruto to come after him. Sure enough, 5 seconds later the blonde had finished, paid for his meal, and was coming after him, so right as the teen was about to reach him, Danny spoke. "My name is dannyphantom, but please call me Danny, and apparently I'm your new roommate. Also, before you ask, because I know you will, I'm not from the elemental nations, but the Hokage has offered me residence in the village." Naruto, who was in the middle of jump to reach up to him, heard this and practically face planted into the dirt in shock. The Halfa turned to look at him for a split moment, wondering if he should do something, and upon seeing no movement picked Naruto up by his collar with ease. The thought that he didn't have to hide all his abilities here went through his mind as he held the blonde up before setting him back down on his feet. Meanwhile Naruto was in shock, not only about apparently having a new roommate but also about the fact that a scrawny person about his own height had just picked him up with ease. That was until they started to wave their hand in front of his face, causing the blonde to blink for a moment before yelling out loud enough for the village to hear him. New roommate. Danny, after hearing Naruto yell, was down on the ground laughing for some reason and through some labored breaths spoke. Please don't yell, I can't stop, to funny can't stop laughing. The bland gave a deadpan stare at the strange-haired boy in front of him as he laughed on the ground before suddenly standing up again, having calmed down. Yes, I'm your new roommate Naruto, and as far as I know you have some sort of apartment with an extra room. I don't know, the Hokage sent me to bunk with you and I don't feel like deceiving you since you look like a good kid. Having calmed down as fast as he had been sent to the ground laughing, the Halfa could be sure the ANBU agents that were watching him were looking down at him with deadpan looks and feeling slightly sorry about him before Naruto spoke. So, you've been sent to bunk with me by the Hokage and you're not trying to make up any lies to deceive me or anything? With that, Danny nodded before suddenly finding himself being grabbed and dragged by the blonde who was off and running. Hidden in the shadows, the ANBU exchanged a quick look with each other, suddenly feeling sorry for the strangely colored hair and eyed teen. They also, unknown to them confirming Danny's theory, were looking down at the Halfa with a deadpan look before proceeding to follow him. Eventually though, Naruto ran into the door to his apartment, completely forgetting it was locked and letting go of the Halfa as a result. As for the young Halfa, he just shook his head for a small moment upon being surprised before looking at the blonde and speaking. Even I know that the door would be locked, Naruto, and I also take it you forgot the key inside, didn't you? At once Naruto recovered and rubbed the back of his head sheepishly while the Halfa let out a sigh and glanced at the door before the blonde spoke. Yeah, if you have any idea on how to get in them I would be all ears, cause I so do not want to get the manager involved. With that, a grin appeared on Danny's face before he suddenly disappeared in a cloud of smoke, making the blonde think he used a transformation technique to turn into a chair. Really, that was your great plan? Suddenly the door opened and Danny was on the other side, leaving Naruto to look at him confused before the Halfa spoke. Normally the body replacement technique would be used to saw yourself with something out of defense, but using it in reverse can be just as helpful. With that, the Halfa allowed the obviously shocked blonde inside before grabbing the chair and easily making his way in as well, while speaking. Also, if you would be so kind as to not nearly pull my arm out of its socket when dragging me around, I would greatly appreciate it. The blonde only smiled sheepishly in response at the whole thing, still not used to suddenly having a roommate before speaking. Sorry about that, it's not often that someone comes into the village that doesn't seem to hate me for some reason. Internally Danny flinched at the comment of someone being hated for something he didn't know before speaking. I don't really know myself why you would be hated by everyone, but from past experience I can tell you people are afraid of things they don't understand. Even the brightest and kindest of people can be made into attacking something they don't understand, whether it be an idea all the way to a living being. With that, Danny finished as he took a glance around the room they were in and spotted the couch, which made him suddenly feel very tired. Taking off his bag and placing it next to it, the Halfa proceeded to collapse on the couch, and before Naruto knew it he was asleep. In response, the blonde blinked twice as he heard the boy's breathing turn into a soft snoring before speaking in disbelief. He just fell asleep. When was the last time he even slept? Shortly after though, even the blonde ninja in training had to turn in as well as the day's events caught up with him. Finally they're both asleep. Up on the roof, the ANBU agents exchanged a look with each other before one of them quickly got into the room to look through the Halfa's bag. A quick check showed that inside the bag was a signal kunai knife, not poised, some clock that used to contain food, and a signal sword with a green hilt. For a moment the ANBU glanced at the bag again to make sure the sword was real, seeing as it was too big to actually fit into the bag, but there it was, defying all logic. Not wanting to even think how it was possible, they put the bag down before taking note of the metal tube that was now held in the Halfa's grip. Being careful, the ANBU agent quickly moved towards said metal tube only to suddenly have his hand grabbed mid-air. As such, the agent tensed as the Halfa looked at him with half-open eyes before speaking almost as if he was in a trance. I will die to prevent the map of my people from falling into others' hands. You will not try to take it again. I will not stop until I have reacquired it, even if I have to destroy this entire village looking for it. With that the Halfa easily went back to sleep on the couch, clutching the metal tube even tighter than before. Quietly the ANBU agent quickly retreated, suddenly having the chills for some reason, and upon landing heard his partner speak. "What suddenly got into you?" Suppressing the sudden sense of uncontrollable fear inside of him, the ANBU agent quickly spoke. "He has a signal kunai knife and a sword that defies logic by fitting into his bag. He also has some sort of metal tube. Seems like he would protect it with his life, probably an ancient artifact of his people that if taken he would go to crazy lengths like destroying Konohagakure to make sure it's safe." The two only looked at each other as the ANBU agent shivered again, unable to hold himself together before speaking again. Wherever that kid came from and whatever he had to go through left him being capable of acting even in his sleep. With that the two fell into silence as the implications hit them strong and caused them both to shiver as the other one spoke. "If this kid is capable of fighting in his sleep, then knocking him unconscious wouldn't really do a thing to him in battle. Better report this right away." Time skip, morning. Morning came and Danny found himself waking up early before taking note that there was now 3 ANBU agents to keep an eye on him. Shaking it off, he got up to make something to eat for himself and Naruto, who was instantly up and around the instant he smelled the food. Rather quickly the blonde found himself sitting at the table of that apartment as the Halfa put some pancakes in front of him. Quickly the Hofa had to suppress a chuckle as he went to his bag and got some out his kunai knife and sword from the time Vlad tried to steal the infinite map before speaking. "Hey Naruto, don't you have school or something to deal with around here?" Suddenly the blonde stopped eating and looked up at the clock before proceeding to freak out at the time. This was how Danny found himself suddenly being dragged behind the blonde ninja to the academy. Eventually though the Halfa found himself outside of the academy lying down in one of the nearby trees while thinking about some of the things he knew. Truthfully, he was ahead of a few people thanks to his time training when he thought he would be entering this world as a teen but was now an 11-year-old. This meant that he was ahead of everyone, and even though he had problems with the regular clone technique of which either his original or ghost self appeared, the more advanced shadow clone technique was easy for him. With a sigh he quickly made the signs for the regular clone technique to see if it still happened before making 2 clones. In a puff of smoke on 2 other branches on his level 2 more of him appeared without any shadows, and a quick glance showed the same result. The clone on his left had completely raven black hair and icy blue eyes, while the one on the right had snow white hair and glowing green eyes. "So you apparently have the same problem as Naruto does when it comes to the regular clone technique." Looking down, Danny saw that the Hokage was looking up at him before dispelling the 2 clones and speaking. "Yeah, well, when you have 2 forms, one of which infused some of itself into your other form to keep it alive, this kind of things can happen. The one with black hair was what I used to look like before the incident that left me as a wandering ninja, while my white-haired counterpart is the one from the other nation. Helpful, but I can only use the shadow clone technique to actually get a look-alike, seeing as how I'm now stuck like this." With a shrug, Danny proceeded to look up at the sky through the leaves of the tree, temporarily being reminded of the ghost zone as sunlight basked through the leaves before hearing the Hokage speak. It seems like you know a forbidden technique, Daniel-san. I would normally ask how you learned, but seeing on how the 2 nations you come from overlap one another by existing on 2 separate planes of reality, I see no harm in you knowing it. As for why I came here, I thought you would like to know. I can pull a few strings to get you into the academy, though by doing so you would swear your allegiance to us and be made to live here." For a moment the Halfa was quiet as he continued to look up at the sky before finally letting out a sigh and speaking. "I will be willing to help out, but don't expect me to kill. That is something that's against the rules of the zone of death for multiple reasons I cannot even begin to describe. Horribly maim and scare to the point of contemplating suicide, yes, but never directly kill. It's not for the protection of others, though, that's for sure. I also can't completely be loyal to the village either, though I will gladly sacrifice myself to keep those that are innocent safe." With that, Danny easily slipped down from the tree and landed on his feet, not at all bothered by the impact due to being able to fly. The Hokage though just chuckled under his breath and easily pulled out a slip of paper before speaking. "I expected nothing less, after all this Clockwork-san deliberately mentioned some of the more unsavory things that could happen if you or any from the zone of death are forced to kill. He also made it clear as to why you cannot be completely loyal to the village, which after what happened to your original home and clan is understandable. You were not raised here and we cannot make you be loyal to us, though I do have to question why you have two last names. Looking up, the old man saw that the Halfa was no longer there and he now had a different slip of paper with some writing on it. Quickly glancing down, he chuckled at what was written before slipping it into his coat pocket and walking back to his office. Time skip, 30 minutes, location, Ninja Academy Taijutsu class. Grumbling, Naruto leaned against the wall of his taijutsu class while wondering why Danny was not in the academy. He then remembered that despite his age his friend was a wandering ninja and no doubt wouldn't be allowed in. Greetings class, today we're going to be having a new student joining us by the name of Phantom, Fenton Daniel, who if you couldn't tell has two last names. At once the blonde had a wide-eyed expression as he saw his friend easily walk out of a shadowy corner of the room he never noticed before. A few people even started to whisper to each other upon seeing the mysterious boy with hair that resembled that of a skunk. Smirking, Naruto realized he had the perfect nickname for his friend now. Before the teacher silenced everyone and spoke. Now who wants to be the first one to spar without new student and show him the ropes around here? At once everyone went quiet and most surprisingly out of everyone Sasuke decided to step forward with a calm and stoic face. Danny, though, in response did a quick study of his opponent with a warrior's eye thanks to his many months of battle with his own enemies. Quietly the two took the ring and right away they assumed their battle stances, ready for what their opponent would dish out. Sasuke looked at this new opponent with a cold indifference. The only reason he had stepped up was to see if this newcomer posed any real challenge to him. The more he looked at him though, the more the boy realized that the kid in front of him was harder to read than expected. Suddenly the fight began and the two stood ready for combat before the skunk-haired teen decided to throw the first punch to get things started. This in turn quickly sent the black-haired boy into motion as he proceeded to dodge and follow up with his own strike only to have it deflected. Seems like this one is going to be harder than I first estimated. This thought went through Sasuke's mind as he smirked slightly and started to get more intense in his fighting. As for Danny, he easily either dodged, blocked, or even redirected attacks. With little to no effort on his part due to his enhanced reflexes. Though ninja were fast and almost on par with ghosts, they were still slightly slower than Skulker, which was faster than at least a quarter of all his enemies. Quickly parrying another blow though, the Halfa smirked and sidestepped an attack in order to deliver his own quick strike to Sasuke's back. As such, the black-haired boy was down on the ground faster than expected from a strong blow that shouldn't have been possible from such a skinny boy. Time skip, free PRD. Letting out a sigh, Danny walked through the halls of the Ninja Academy having already finished all the work and he needed to do. One of the bright sides to being a Halfa, he thought, until coming upon a struggling Naruto who was trying to make use the clone technique and failing. Ah, come on already. Why can't I get this stupid thing down? The blonde let out a frustrated sigh as he dissipated the bad attempt of yet another clone and collapsed on the ground as the Halfa came up to him and spoke. You aren't the only one who can't use that technique, Naruto. Then again, my clones are more successful but I can never get them to look like me. Instantly Naruto jumped out of surprise upon seeing and hearing Danny so close to him before speaking. Well, I'm glad to know that I wouldn't be the only one here that can't summon a clone. What happens with yours anyways? At once the skunk-haired teen quickly summoned two clones and the blonde was left looking at three different colored hair and eyed boys as the Halfa spoke. Naruto, the black-haired one is what I used to look like and the white-haired one is another version of me, and no, I won't explain to you how I have two appearances unless it is an extreme emergency. Quickly Danny dispelled the two clones and momentarily glanced at the area where he knew someone was looking at them both before ignoring it. As for Naruto, he was left speechless by the appearance of the two clones, which were much better than his own, before shaking out of it and speaking. Alright then, I can respect you want to keep some secrets, though in return I want some help training to get better and become the next Hokage. The blonde smirked and the Halfa couldn't help but smile at his friend's actions or goal. because in truth it was a good way to actually gain some recognition before he spoke. That's a good goal, Naruto, but I don't think you would become the next Hokage right away. After all, you need to train some more. With that, Danny left a slightly deflated Naruto behind, who had crashed into the ground from his pose upon hearing the alpha, yet knowing that he spoke the truth. As for said skunk-haired teen, he walked over to a tree that was out of the way since they were outside, but stopped before speaking. You know, Sasuke, trying to hide from me is practically pointless, so you might as well come on out and just ask our question. Almost instantly the black-haired boy jumped down from the tree since he was discovered and spoke. Your skills are impressive for someone who came from outside the village, and I'll admit you are better than me in combat, though how you can be friends with that blonde doofus is beyond me. Danny shook his head for a moment and let out a sigh as he leaned against the tree now before speaking. Sasuke Uchiha, you should know that unlike you, Naruto never knew his family, and you shouldn't be one to judge so quickly. Also, I beat you in taijutsu because unlike everyone here I've actually been in real combat, so don't expect me to help you out in your revenge scheme. At once Sasuke internally flinched while wondering how the boy in front of him knew about his revenge scheme before getting his answer. If you're wondering how I know you want revenge, I dealt with several people just like you from my homeland and can see the signs. So let me make this simple, vengeance will only lead to suffering in the end and can only gain you so much power. The alpha went quiet as he waited for Sasuke to speak and let out some of his emotions, which turned out to be true. Then you're pathetic. I had my entire clan killed before my very eyes by my older brother. Why am I even telling you this? You can't possibly understand. With that, the black-haired boy started to turn around but suddenly froze upon hearing Danny speak. I may not know what it's like having your entire clan killed before your eyes, Sasuke, but I can one-up you and say I know what it's like to witness your entire village killed before your eyes by a signal madman. Any resistance to ignore the skunk-haired boy's words were instantly lost on the lone survivor of the Uchiha clan as the alpha continued. I had to witness everyone I ever knew die by the hands of an enemy that in a sense was part of my own clan but broke a deadly rule. This rule was set up in my homeland not for the protection of others as one might think, but for the protection of oneself. Those that break this ancient law can either keep going and kill everything in their path, whether it's friend or foe, with no remorse, as they even kill their loved ones. We called them the broken and have no choice but to put them down to protect everyone and everything. With that, Danny paused while wondering how he knew this, but after a moment he chalked it up to ghost instinct and spoke again. Others though go into a sort of depression, and we call them the lost, for they do nothing but sit around and act like an empty shell. The broken that killed my entire village, they started out as a lost, you can say, due to an incident that led to the death of people because of their actions. They had too much power, and using every bit of my strength I had to stop him, though with the only way being to imprison them. You seriously couldn't kill the guy for some reason, cut of his head, he just picks it up and puts it back on his shoulders. Stab his heart, he acts as if nothing happened. We even tried to rip him apart using anything we can find, going as far as turning him into mincemeat and throwing it into the fire. I spent months trying to kill him before realizing this alongside others, and eventually we just locked him in a sound tight room with no windows and no food or water. They're not even human for that anymore. So tell me, what are you going to do after you find and kill your brother? It might make you feel better, but in the end it only does so much, and you may hurt others along the way. With that, Danny proceeded to walk away and leave Sasuke to his thoughts, but before leaving he said one last thing to the black-haired boy. If you still want to be an Avenger, then go ahead and don't let me stop you, but know this, you will hurt those around you, and by not moving on you will also harm the memories of the dead as well, who would want you to move on with your life. Time skip, 1 year. Letting out a sigh, Danny rested on the couch while reading a book and waiting for Naruto to return from whatever it was he was doing. Mizuki, one of the exam teachers, had wanted to talk to the blonde who was almost like a brother to him about something which the skunk-haired teen got a bad vibe from for some reason. He quickly glanced at the clock, which showed it was getting quite late, before letting out a sigh just as a knock came from the door. As such, the alpha did a backflip off the couch and opened up said door, only to quickly be pushed aside as a few ANBU agents and Irika Yumino came rushing in. Hey! Does someone want to explain what the hell is going on here? The agents were looking around the place like crazy as Iruka turned to face the skunk-haired teen and spoke. Naruto has stole the scroll of seals from the Hokage's study for some reason, Daniel-san. We need to get it back quickly before it falls into the wrong hands. For a moment Danny was quiet until everything suddenly clicked in his mind and the Halfa spoke. Mizuki took Naruto to the side today to talk to him privately for some reason. I think he tricked him into stealing it for him. At once all eyes fell onto the green and blue-eyed boy as spoke in a deadly calm voice before quickly disappearing as they found nothing. After this though Danny followed Iruka till they reached the woods but was suddenly stopped by a familiar voice. Daniel, this is an event that must happen without your interference, at least until a certain point which will be revealed in time. Quickly the Halfa stopped where he was and used his limited omniscience powers to see into the future for the perfect time to make his appearance. The skunk-haired teen then grinned like a madman as he jumped from the tree and landed by Naruto as both shouted the same thing, multiple shadow clone jutsu. Naruto quickly glanced at the person he thought of as a brother as the skunk-haired teen landed beside him and copied the same technique he was using. This in turn quickly filled up the area with hundreds of blonde and black-white-haired boys before Mizuki spoke. What? You're standing beside that demon brat who is attacking his teachers and is responsible for stealing the scroll of seals. Danny only snorted in response upon hearing this and now glaring at the man in front of him spoke. I saw and heard the whole thing, Mizuki, and my brother here has more humanity in him than you do, and I've known about him the entire time I've been here. So SCK it up, you coward, and get ready for the beating of a lifetime. I may not be able to kill, but I can horribly maim you. With that the army of Naruto's and Danny's quickly descended upon the lone man who could do nothing to stop them. Eventually though the whole thing was over and the blonde passed out after receiving his headband before Iruka turned his attention to the Halfa and spoke. Since you also seem to know the shadow clone technique, Daniel-san, then you also pass. Though did you really know about Naruto being the you-know? The skunk-haired teen just nodded as he picked up his brother as it were and after getting the blonde boy on his back spoke. I was told a bit by the Hokage about the whole thing and he left it to me to figure the bulk of it. Besides, Naruto has a striking resemblance to the fourth Hokage. Combine that with the fact that major beasts of power can't be killed due to their immense power, it wasn't strong to figure out the whole thing, though don't expect the two of us to be in school tomorrow after a day like this. With a nod Iruka watched as Danny carried Naruto on his back away from them and back to the apartment they shared. He then made his way to the Hokage's office where he returned the scroll of seals and the Hokage spoke. Before you leave Iruka, tell me what you think of Daniel-san and his relation to Naruto. Caught off guard the Ninja Academy teacher blinked for a moment before finally regaining his calm and speaking. If anything, the two see each other as brothers and care for one another as such, though I am concerned by the fact that Danny knows about the Kyuubi. For a moment the Hokage just chuckled before looking up with a pleased smile on his face and speaking. Yes, I knew he would figure it out eventually. Iruka, there is something about that boy that makes him in a similar situation to Naruto. This is the reason he does not care about Kyuubi no Kitsune. Daniel himself gives people seconds chances easily and wants to see the good in everyone. He even admitted to me once that he does not care about power and stated that Naruto needed a friend and he would never betray anyone that he considers a friend. After all, it is the way of his people. Scene shift. Groaning Naruto opened his eyes at the exact moment he was suddenly dropped onto the couch. He looked at Danny for a moment, who in turn went over to the stove and apparently started to make something before speaking. When you're done still trying to pretend to be asleep, Naruto, know that I'm making ramen for late supper for the both of us. At once the blonde was suddenly off of the couch as the Halfa continued to put things into the pot before realizing the current problem. Hey, you tricked me. Why were you so calm upon finding out I was the Kyuubi? At once Danny stopped making food and marched on over to a slightly scared Naruto before speaking. You are not Kyuubi no Kitsune, Naruto. You are not a monster and you never were or will be. You are just a boy with a burden placed upon you by the fourth Hokage to contain the most powerful being there is. You will never think of it that way again, got it? Shaking his head viciously, the blonde backed down a bit out of fear of the skunk-haired teen as he went back to the food he was making. For a few minutes it was quiet besides the occasional bubbling from the pan before Danny let out a sigh and spoke. "Sorry about that. I kind of have this definition about what a monster is, and I cannot stand it when someone thinks they are one. Besides, if you thought that you were the only person in the world with one of the tailed demons inside of you, think again. Kyubi no Kitsune was the 9-tailed beast, and traveling down the line is a beast that has less and less power also inside of someone else, and these people are known as Jinchuriki. Though don't let it go to your head. Kurama is no doubt still angry, and it would be best if you not give in to your anger for the time being." With that, Danny finished talking while he left a surprised Naruto looking at him from behind before the blonde spoke. "Alright, how do you know so much about Jinchuriki, and why are you so calm by it?" The blonde looked at his skunk-haired brother for a moment, who for the first time seemed to hesitate before letting out another sigh and speaking. "As you know, I come from outside the village and the elemental nations as well. My original heritage though comes from not one nation but two. One nation known as the Nation of Life and the other known as the Zone of Death, and no one is dead, it's just a name." Danny said the last part upon noticing Naruto's mouth go open in shock, and this made the blonde go quiet as he continued. "Me. I'm a halfa, as in bound to the two nations just as much as each person is bound to the nation they were born in. The thing about them though was that the two nations were overlapped, occupying the same area but existing on two different planes of existence. My bloodline though is unique in that no halfa is born directly. Instead they are created, usually from an accident of some sort. As such, there are only 3 halfas in existence, only one of which can use chakra. Thing is, I'm rather unique that way." With that, the skunk-haired teen went quiet as he quickly finished preparing the ramen before putting them into bowls for himself and Naruto while speaking again. "In the Zone of Death, they use a different sort of energy similar to chakra but known as ectoplasm or ectoenergy. The two energies are different in regards that one energy can't be used by someone using chakra and the opposite holds true. Ectoenergy though can be used without seals and can give many powers like that of chakra with a few exceptions. Here and there. Me. I'm the only being that combines both of them for some reason, but being a halfa comes at a deadly cost. I normally cannot tell anyone except those I trust, which in my case were my only friends and family who died alongside my village before I came here." With that, Danny finished talking and the two ate in silence for a few minutes as Naruto contemplated these words. His story seems similar to mine. He had no choice in regards to his power and what he has to deal with. This thought went through the blonde's head as he looked at the person he thought of as a brother in front of him before speaking. "That's just. I can't even begin to describe how totally awesome that is, but you still didn't tell me how you know about the Jinchuriki." At once the skunk-haired teen smirked slightly before looking up at the ceiling and after a moment spoke. "Simple, Naruto, a leader's duty to its nation is to know about those things that could be threats, and even a prince must know about them if they are going to survive, even if said prince had to overthrow the original corrupt power to become a prince." With that said, Danny went back to eating his ramen and Naruto's mouth dropped open in surprise before letting out an ear-piercing scream. "You mean to say that you're an actual prince of an entire kingdom?" Almost instantly the blonde went into a deadpan look as the halfa collapsed onto the floor laughing like a madman before speaking through labored breaths. "Yes, I am. Please don't yell again, and please don't mention this to anyone else. I don't want this knowledge to get out before everyone is ready." After the whole laughing matter and food was sorted out, the two boys instantly went to bed and collapsed on their respected ones. A few seconds later though, Danny found himself standing in a sewer-like landscape and in front of him was a giant cage. With a sigh he easily floated up out of the water and went on over to the cage, very curious as to what this dream was about, since he obviously knew he was dreaming. At least that was the plan before there came a very loud bang followed by lots of growling and lots of angry screams. Deciding to ignore the few stings of insults, Danny sat in a lotus position and waited for the intense yelling to die down before speaking. You done yet, or should I just sit here and wait for you to finish another string of insults and curses before starting a proper conversation? Instantly everything went quiet, and out of the darkness moved a giant fox head of some kind that easily approached the bars before speaking. Who in the name of the Sage of the Six Paths are you, and how did you get to my prison, mortal? Despite the anger-laced voice, the Halfa could detect a hint of curiosity in Kyubi no Kitsune voice before speaking. My name is dannyphantom or Daniel Fenton, but for the most part Kurama I tend to prefer Danny. Danny looked at the fox demon in front of him for a moment, and Kurama looked at him before finally breaking down laughing for some reason. The giant fox then suddenly stopped just as fast as he had began and fixed an almost gleeful eye upon the Halfa before speaking. So this is the great defeater of Pariah Dark, Prince of the Ghost Zone, Destroyer of the Reality Gauntlet, Keeper of the Infinite Map, and Protector of all? I expected you to be taller. The fox demon gave the skunk-haired teen a bored look, to which the Halfa only shook his head before speaking. Yeah, I get that a lot, demon. As for how I got here, your guess is as good as mine, though I do think it probably has to do with the fact I overshadowed you once in a certain MSTR of time. Glancing up at what would be the sky, Danny for sure thought that clockwork was messing with him before suddenly hearing Kurama screaming quite a colorful vocabulary. You were that god-forsaken four that helped subdue me and seal me in this pathetic excuse of a prison. The first thing I'll do upon getting out of here is rip you to shreds, you pitiful excuse for a Halfa. Cure another long line of empty death threats and promises. The skunk-haired teen waited for the fox demon to calm down. You done, little guy? Good. Now what did you expect me to do upon seeing what appeared to be a giant nine-tailed fox attacking a village for no apparent reason whatsoever? Instantly Kyubi no Kitsune gave the Halfa an obvious deadpan look at that bit of information before speaking. I'll give you that this time, ghostling, but don't expect me to be so lenient the next time you do so, got it? Upon seeing Danny nod, Kurama settled down onto the ground with a sigh before speaking again. You would be surprised the information that drops down the grapevine and reaches me even here. Did you know that your pitiful enemy known as Vlad Plasmius is still trying to find you? At that, Danny shook his head and let out a long groan, showing he could really care less about the elder Halfa before speaking. If you ever manage to get out by some slide of luck and meet him, please do feel free to eat him and say that I was the one who said it. Instantly the giant fox demon froze at the Halfa's words, which made his grin reach the far corners of his cheeks, and couldn't help but laugh around on the floor. The laughter slowly died down before Kurama spoke. You amuse me, Halfa, though I am confused on how you are able to use both ectoplasm and chakra. The two energies normally cancel the other out for some reason due to both being almost the same thing yet different wavelengths. Danny just shrugged, not really knowing himself about the whole thing before speaking. Beats me, when I overshadowed you it apparently jump-started my chakra network, and thanks to intermingling among the earth I came from, the reserves I have are insanely high for some reason. Combined with my practiced control over ecto-energy, I basically got near excellent control of all my chakra as well, though as far as I know I don't have any BLD lines. That doesn't mean that I am still developing new abilities. With that, the Halfa shrugged as Kurama just looked at him for a small moment before letting out a sigh and speaking. I just know that old stopwatch will do something to me later, but I don't care. Anything he can do to me would be better than laying around here all the time. Now look, I don't know the exact method, but if you are able to combine both your chakra and ectoplasmic energy, then you might be able to obtain a rather different ability that, thanks to your developing techniques, the new ability could be counted as a new bloodline. Danny suddenly blinked upon hearing this and was rather surprised that Kurama was helping him as the demon fox continued. For the most part this ability would cancel out any bloodline with the person you come in contact with, and depending on how much energy you put in depends on how long it takes the bloodline out for. That is just a theory anyway. At that, Kurama shrugged and left Danny to his thoughts for a moment before speaking again. At least you may be able to disable another person's bloodline or bloodlines for a few minutes and at most about 5 hours, kid. Though I would advise you, don't get too confident with this information or you may end up nullifying both your energies for good. You will only have yourself to blame. If you also mix the wrong amounts you can be quite sure that there would be a bit of an explosion. That would be a sight to see. With that the demon fox started to chuckle and left the halfa shaking his head in annoyance at the whole thing before speaking. Thanks for the tips, and since I'm here I might as well ask if I would be allowed to possibly be able to return and talk at a later time. You are actually nice to talk with, Kurama. Meh, feel free to return when you like, kid, but I feel the need to request you to be quiet about this, and could you do something about this kid's eating habits? Ramen is good and all, but eating it all the time is not healthy for anyone. If it wasn't for me, the brat would be dead by now. When the demon fox finished speaking, the halfa gave a thumbs up before disappearing from the mindscape with a soft pop. With a soft yawn, Danny easily got up before walking into the main room of their apartment to fix something for him and his brother to eat that wasn't ramen. At least that was what he was going to do before stopping to stare at a purple-cloaked person standing in front of the stove making something. Good morning, Daniel-san. I thought I would drop in for a little surprise and give you something that you left behind. At least I was, until noticing the stove and deciding that I should make you something to eat as well. The man turned around and the halfa could see he had a slight tan and somehow both his eyes were red with a scar going down one side of his face. The man wore purple gloves and had a black gear-shaped clasp holding his cloak on, black jeans, and a gray t-shirt. Instantly he recognized the man as a more human-looking Clockwork before nodding his head in slight SBMSN before speaking. Clockwork, it is nice to see you again. How did you manage to get past the ANBU that were and still are watching me until I graduate? From the academy? Almost instantly the MSTR of time caught a kunai knife that was tossed at him as if it was nothing before speaking. Really, Daniel, have I taught you nothing? The skills of those in this nation is great, but none can fully compare to the stealth skills of those from the zone of death. Now that you're awake though, I'll be off. With that, Clockwork disappeared in a cloud of smoke while smiling and seriously creeping the halfa out, who spoke quietly. Note to self, use omniscience power no matter how limited when dealing with Clockwork in the ninja world. Letting out a sigh, Danny went to get some of the food before speaking out loud so the ANBU agents could hear him. That person was Clockwork, and back in my homeland he holds the title of MSTR of time, due to the fact he seemingly can manipulate the very fabric of time itself. I should also note that titles tend to be a big thing for some reason that is beyond me, but should never be questioned if you value your life. Danny finished talking and began to eat some of the food before moving over to the package that was placed on the coffee table and reading the note that was in English for some reason. Dear Daniel, if you are going to survive in this ninja world for any length of time beyond this point, then you're going to need some more equipment. You also left this behind in my lair in your rush to get out of there before the observance came, which was a good idea at the time. Inside of this box, besides a bomb that would go off if you don't reach into it intangible, are the following items. 1 pouch. 2 kunai knives. 15 shuriken. 1 family picture. 2 family scrolls. 1 ecto-enhanced generic sealing scroll, instructions inside. 2 Fenton thermos. 5 Spectre deflectors, calibrated. 1 upgraded and complete exoskeleton. 1 human ghost chakra shield generator plus power source. The ecto-enhanced generic sealing scroll requires you to put both chakra and ecto energy in to obtain anything, making it the near impossible to open otherwise. As for the Spectre deflectors, they have been calibrated with you and your allies in mind so it won't shock them. On a side note, you can even upgrade them to repel chakra if the case ever need be, but I would suggest being careful in regards to if you decide to become an inventor in this world. They are horribly underdeveloped when it comes to technology and would use any advancements, including your own, to their own gain in combat before finding practical use for them. Eternal luck, Clockwork, MSTR of time. P.S. Oh, I forgot to mention that this letter will self-destruct up reading this word so no one else can read it. Instantly the letter burst into green flames that made Danny just glare at the green flames for a moment as the note turned into ash, which also burned away. He sighed before reaching into the box and grabbing everything he could find that wasn't a bomb before speaking. Be careful with that box, it contains a bomb inside that would destroy everything inside and probably the box itself if the string is cut. Only looking up for a moment, the skunk-haired boy let out a sigh upon noticing the box was gone before looking back at his slightly modified family picture. By that he meant on how his family and friends were wearing slightly different clothing. Danielle was in the picture, and his home had a different style to compensate for the change in technology between his original home world and this one. Letting out a slight chuckle at the multiple failed attempts it required to take said picture, Danny was unaware of Naruto, who was now on top of the couch having finished eating. "Hey Danny, is that a family picture, and if it is, who are the others standing alongside you in it?" Almost right away the Alpha jumped upon hearing the blonde speak before taking a few deep breaths and speaking. "Naruto, your stealth skills are above and beyond that of your average ninja if you can sneak up on me. As for your question, this is a picture of my family and my only friends before my village was destroyed." With that, Danny went to describe every one of his family and friends in turn alongside their best and worst qualities before hearing the blonde speak. Danny could hear the depression in his vocal tones. "At least you got to meet your parents. Ever since the attack by Kyubi no Kitsune my parents have been dead." Naruto let out a depressed sigh as Danny looked at his brother in pity before speaking to him. "You know that's not true, Naruto." Danny placed his hand on his brother's shoulder. "You might not remember it since you were so young, but you did meet your parents before they died. Besides, I have a strange feeling that something will happen in the future concerning a certain Fruit Loop I know for some reason and all the Jinchuriki." The Alpha frowned for a moment after he spoke the last part in a whisper so only he could hear before Naruto looked at him again. "Fair point, I guess. Anyways, have any clue what we're going to be doing today, 'cause I got nothing." The blonde looked at his brother for a moment, who just let out a shrug before putting all his items away and speaking. "Today I think the both of us should relax. After all, we both performed the multiple shadow clone technique yesterday and graduated as a result. If anything, we are entitled to a day of relaxation after beating up a traitor, and the academy knows that we won't be in today after all that happened," the skunk-haired teen suggested before proceeding to lie down on the couch since it was already noon before Naruto shrugged and returned to his own room. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 2. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Cray22 on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.